Hello, welcome to Chapter 8, Lesson 4. Today we're going to be talking about equivalent fractions. Now, when I see that word equivalent, I really notice the first part looks like equal or equa, right? And so equivalent fractions are fractions that are actually worth the same amount, right? So let's say I had a pizza and I cut it into 2 pieces and I ate 1 out of 2 pieces. I would eat half of the pizza, right? Well, what if I took that same pizza, I'm not very good at drawing exactly the same, pretend it's the exact same pizza, and I cut it into 4 slices, 4 equal slices, and I eat 2 of them. Do you notice anything? 2 out of 4 is the exact same thing as 1 out of 2, because instead of eating 1 big piece, I ate 2 smaller pieces, but they were worth half of the pizza. So those are called equivalent fractions, 1/2 and 2/4. And there are many, right? Because I could cut this same pizza again. And now I have 8 equal pieces, and I ate 4. So 4/8. Okay, and there are many equivalent fractions, so let's dig into them. All right, so here we have our first example. It says, a recipe for spaghetti and meatballs calls for 3/4 of a pound of ground beef. So that means if we have 1 pound, I'm going to cut it into 4 equal pieces. And I need to use 3 out of 4 equal pieces of that ground beef. So I'll just have a little bit left over. It says find 2 fractions that are equivalent to 3/4. Okay, so if I was going to look at what does 3/4 look like? So here I have 3 1/4 fraction tiles. Okay. I could place 6 1/8 tiles below the 1/4. So if I cut each 1/4 tile in half, I would get 8ths, right? So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of 8, or 6/8 right below it. And then if I cut well, I'm not really cutting the 8ths in half because that would be 16ths, but I could also place 12ths in there. Okay, so I'm going to show you how do we know that without having fraction tiles? How can I know what an equivalent fraction looks like? So that's down here. Okay, so if I have a fraction of 3/4, if I multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number, then I'm not really changing the number because I'm multiplying it by 1, right? If I have 2/2, that means I cut my pizza into 2 equal pieces and I ate 2 of them. I ate the whole thing. I ate 1 whole pizza. That is equal to 1. Okay, so if I multiply the numerator and denominator by the same number, let's do 2/2. I can multiply numerators. 3 times 2 is equal to 6. 4 times 2 is equal to 8. Right, so 6/8, which is what is shown there. Look, I have 6 1/8 or 6/8 if I added them all up. Right, if I added them all up, I have 6 of them, 6/8. Or if I take that same 3/4 and I multiply it by 3/3, which is just the same as multiplying it by 1, right, I'd get 9/12. And notice how 9/12 and 6/8 and 3/4, they're all worth the same amount. There is not one that is more than the other. They're worth the same. And that is called equivalent fractions. Next, just says you can use multiplication to write fractions with a denominator of 10 as an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 100. So let's dig into that, okay? It says Liliana has a container of dry beans. The table shows, here's our table, the fraction of each type of bean. Which type of bean shows a fraction that is equivalent to 3/10 of a container? 3/10, 3/10. Each fraction in the table has a denominator of 100. So By multiplying or dividing, how can I go from 100 to 10? I divide by 10, right? So I guess in option 2, instead of dividing by 10, I can take my 3/10 and I can multiply it by 10 over 10 so that I get a denominator, or the down number, right? D down denominator of 100. But if I multiply the denominator by 100, I also need to multiply the numerator by 10. Sorry, not multiply by 100, multiply it by 10. I also need to multiply the numerator by 10. So I do 3 times 10 is 30. So 30/100ths is equivalent to 3/10. Okay, so 3/10 of the container has 30 out of 100 beans, or 30 beans, right? Okay. All right, here's our guided practice. Write the fraction for the part that is shaded. Then find an equivalent fraction. So in this picture, I see that 2 out of 4 equal pieces are shaded in, 2/4. Okay, so to find an equivalent fraction, I just need to multiply my numerator or denominator by the same number. Okay, so I don't know, I like 2's. If I multiply it by 2 over 2, I would get 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4/8 is equivalent to 2/4. Now, there's another thing that I can do as well. So I see that 2 and 4 share, I could divide them both by 2, right? So instead of multiplying by 2, I could divide them both by 2, and I would get 1/2. 1 over 2, or 1/2. So 1/2 is also an equivalent number, fraction. So we need to find equivalent fractions by either multiplying or dividing. Now, multiplying is a lot easier, right? Because you just pick a number. Dividing is a little harder because you got to know a number that goes into both of those, the numerator and the denominator. Okay, so that was just kind of, and if you look at this too, it's half of the shape, right? Half of the shape is shaded, just they cut it into 4 parts. So number 2 has 1 out of 3 parts shaded. So to find an equivalent fraction, let's multiply by 3 this time. Just for fun, you can multiply 100, you can multiply by 100 over 100, you can multiply by 10 over 10, you can multiply by any number as long as you're doing the same, and you will get an equivalent fraction. 1 times 3 is 3, 3 times 3 is 9. So 3/9 is equivalent. Could I have chosen 2? Yeah, 1/3 times 2 over 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 3 times 2 is 6. Now let's see what's happening when I'm multiplying something by 2. All I'm doing is cutting every piece in half. Look at, I have 2 pieces shaded out of how many total pieces? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 2 out of 6 pieces are shaded. Same amount, I cut each piece into a smaller piece. All right, I'm going to jump forward to page 510. Okay, so it says write the fraction for the part that is shaded. So we have 1, 2, 3 pieces are shaded out of 1, 2, 3, 4 total pieces in the shape. 3/4 of that shape is shaded. Okay, so if I wanted to find an equivalent fraction to 3/4, I could multiply the numerator and denominator by 2 over 2. Okay, so 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 2 is 8. So again, what is happening there when I'm multiplying by 2 over 2? I'm just cutting the pieces in half, right? Because now look, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces shaded out of 8 total pieces. So I didn't change the value of the number. All I changed was, I cut them into smaller pieces. What would happen if I multiplied it by 3 over 3? Instead of cutting them into 2 equal pieces each piece, I would be cutting them each into 3 equal pieces. Okay, and that's why we can do this, because we're not changing the number. We're not changing the value of the number themselves. We're just cutting it into smaller pieces. So here too, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have a 6 out of 8. Okay, that's kind of same as what we had before. Now, what if I multiplied by 2 over 2? I would get 12 out of 16. I'd just be like, boop, cutting in half. Now I have 12 pieces out of 16 total pieces. Equivalent fractions. Find an equivalent fraction for each fraction. Now look here, I've got 20 over 100. I could choose for this one, let's divide them both by 10. 20 divided by 10 is 2. 100 divided by 10 is 10. So 20 hundredths is the same as saying 2 tenths. They're equivalent fractions. 2 eighths, I see I could divide them both by 2 and get 1/4. Okay, could I multiply 2? Sure. Multiply by 2, multiply by 2. I would get 90. 2 90s is worth 180 out of 200. 100 times 2 is 200. Okay, so as long as we're multiplying or dividing by the same numbers on the numerator and the denominator, we will get a good answer. Okay, let's look at this algebra problem here. So I see I went from a 12 to a 2. What happened? I divided by 6. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Okay, so I need to divide 6 by 6. The same thing, look. Divide by 6, divide by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1. So x is equal to 1. Okay, here I went from 10 to 100. What happened? Multiply by 10. So I need to do 3 times 10 to get my answer up here, and that is 30. Notice I did the same to the numerator, multiplied them both by 10. Here we have our numerator values on number 10. So I went from 5 to 10 times 2. So I need to multiply the bottom by 2 to figure out what x is equal to, my missing value. 8 times 2 is 16. Okay, that's all I have for you for today. Make sure you ask if you have any questions. Thanks for watching. Bye.